this is going to be part 2 in the teardown, the second teardown of this engine. Hopefully you guys have seen part 1. We got the hot side and the cold side of the engine off. For this one, we're going to start the valve train and then the front, get the timing belt off. After we do the valve train and the timing belt, then we can go ahead and pop the head off and take a look at the actual block to see everything, see what's going on with it, and kind of go from there, make a determination and stuff. One thing that I have been made aware of in the meantime is about Tomei. I don't know about this one, but I'm gonna do my research and compare part numbers for that one. I think this is a legitimate Tomei head gasket. But somebody had mentioned to me that if you buy your Tomei gaskets and stuff from Tomei USA, it's not actual Tomei. Something about them splitting with the USA branch in like 2019 or something like that. So if you're buying Tomei parts from Tomei USA, you are getting knockoff parts. Their head gaskets are known not to seal at all, even when the engine is on the engine stand and all that stuff. So definitely be careful with that. I got mine from Map Performance through their Amazon store because it had Prime shipping, and I got it pretty quick. One thing that I noticed is on Raw Brokerage, if you look up Tomei head gasket, Raw Brokerage will have one that says Tomei USA on the box, and that box just says Tomei. I don't know if that's a difference or if they updated that or anything like that, but for the most part, what I'm gonna do is just compare the part numbers when I get the chance. But that's neither here nor there. It's still in the box, it's still unopened, and I'm gonna leave it that way until I know for sure. But yeah, onto this. Like I said, we're gonna do the valve covers, or the valve train, engine cover, basically this whole top setup. We're gonna go ahead and knock that off, and then we'll start doing the timing thing. This one is pretty simple. You've already seen me do the valve covers on this thing multiple times in all my other videos. I have a video dedicated to valve cover gasket replacement, so it'll be just like in the last video, or the part 1, where it's mostly all, you know, time lapses and stuff until we get to the actual block itself. But the valve cover, or you know, the valve train and stuff to get the head off, is pretty simple. All you do is take off the valve covers, and that's pretty much it. I will have to remove the coil packs, or yeah, I'll have to remove the coils, which is going to be a pain in the ass because they don't like to sit well. They don't like to go in, and the springs like to, you know, pop out of the actual boots and stuff like that. So that's one of the problems that I had. And then of course that knocking noise was because one of these coils weren't seated properly. So that's one that I'm not looking forward to. But yeah, both valve covers, the coils, and then the timing belt cover up here, as well as the cam gear, and that'll be that for the top of the motor until we get the head off. And then it'll be down here. You have all of the pulleys, or all of the belts, the accessory belts. You got the power steering one. You would have the AC one, but I removed my AC system completely. I still have the system, I'm just not using it right now, so I took it off the engine entirely. But you got the power steering one, you got your water pump one, and then you got your alternator one. Well, the alternator and water pump one are the same, so it's really just 2 accessory belts that you got to take off by loosening some of those. You know, there's a screw, adjustment screw here, and the same thing on the alternator that you would use to loosen up those belt tensions, and then pop those belts off. After that, pop off the harmonic balancer at the bottom, pop off the pulley for the water pump, and then you should be able to pop off the lower engine bay cover, and that's how you'll have access to the timing belt tensioners. Them, make sure your motor is at top dead center before you do this. I can't stress that enough because you'll have a timing nightmare trying to put it back together. So once I get this cover off, I'm gonna set it to top dead center before I pop everything else off. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking. I'm gonna start doing the valve covers, and we'll go from there. Guys, so we got the valve train exposed, timing exposed on the top side at least, as you saw in that time lapse. And then you also probably would have saw me put it at top dead center. That's what those markings are for. Right here, you want to line that line up with the dot that are on the cam gears. That's how you know it's at top dead center. There is also a line down there. There it is, the second line from the first one. Well, that's actually for ignition, but that's also another way to tell, because that second line is also kind of indication of top dead center. But it's one like further in there. The gear on the bottom of the timing belt behind the harmonic balancer has a dot on it as well. So yeah, definitely do that before you get to this point, or before you take this off, type of thing. One thing that I am looking at while I'm going over this is, because the head is going to a machine shop, I have to completely disassemble the head, which is something that I have not done before, especially on this engine. But I'm just kind of looking at it to see how to take certain things apart. I know how I can get the cam lobes off, the cams themselves, and the lifters. That's explanatory. The coil packs are explanatory. This little bracket thing seems to be 2 bolts. The gear on the inside seems to be 4. This, I'm hoping that it's just this Allen key right here, because there's no bolts on the back side. There's no bolts on the front side. It's just this Allen key. So I'm hoping that that'll do it for this, and then I could take off this back mounting piece for the timing. Looks like there's just some bolts under there, and clean that off. This sensor I want to replace because it has oil in it. I think there's like an internal oil leak in that sensor, whatever that sensor is. So I'll see if I can find a replacement for that. I know how to remove this little bracket thing and all that stuff. I don't know if the exhaust manifold studs need to be gone. I hope not, because they were a pain in the ass to get in. So there's that. I do know that the gasket is still in on that side as well. But once you get all that, I think the thing that they said I could leave in was the valve and the valve springs. They're the only things that you could keep in the head. Everything else has to be taken off. So this will be a new horizon. And after I disassemble this and put it back together, the only thing that I haven't touched on this motor would be the internals itself, like the crank, the connector rods and the pistons. Those are still factory torqued down and everything. Literally everything else on this engine I have taken off at some point, with the exception of the head, but that's about to change too. So yeah, now that I got all this exposed, I want to do the head, like I want to take the head and stuff off, or all the components of the head off when the head is off the car. So I'm gonna wait to do that until the head is lifted. What I'm gonna focus on now is starting to do the belts and stuff. So this one, and then I gotta go get a harmonic balancer puller, or just use my impact and hope it's still loose, to get the harmonic balancer off, and then we'll do the lower timing cover, and then we can pop the timing belt off. And after the timing belt off, then we could go ahead and pop the head. The head is really just 4 bolts. Theoretically speaking, it's, let's see, I should be able to see them now. So you got one right there. That's the one that I missed, which is messed up. That one actually doesn't thread into anything, and I'll explain that when we get the head off. If you've seen the video of me doing the gasket replacement, then you already know. There is this one on the power steering bracket that bolts to the head. There are 2 in the back, basically in the same location as that one is, but they're just on the back side. Actually, let me see if I can get them on camera. Let's pop some flash. I can't really pop any flash in the widescreen mode. Let's take the widescreen off. There we go. Let's pop some flash. So you got that one, and then you got the other one on the other side. That's gonna be in there too. That one, and then that's pretty much it. The head studs in there, you know, take the caps, like the little what am I trying to say? The caps that are on the head studs, you pop those off, and then you can lift the head without having to remove like the head studs and stuff. Or you don't need to remove, you shouldn't remove the head studs anyway, unless you're going to be changing them out. But those are ARP head studs, so they should come apart relatively easy. And then we can just lift this whole thing up, and I'm gonna set it right here. I'm gonna clear all this stuff off and set it right here. That way I can have room for it to work on and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's where we're at with it so far. Go back to widescreen and we'll start on this. So my camera cut out in the middle of that last time lapse, but I did get both belts off and the water pump pulley. So we are looking good. We are looking barren. Everything is disconnected. So the next step, of course, is to pop off the harmonic balancer. Unfortunately, I left the battery for my impact at home. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and get that and then come back to it once I get that impact, and then we can go ahead and continue this. But for today, that's probably where I'm gonna stop. We got a couple things to do this weekend, but I'll pick this up on Monday and continue this video. So it'll be a couple days, well, it'll be a day for me, but it'll be like a half a second for you guys. But yeah, like I said, next step, pop off the harmonic balancer, pop off the timing cover, pop off the timing belt, and then pop off the head. I also took out the power steering bracket bolt that mounts to the head itself, just to make it easier for me down the line. So after we get the timing belt on, there is all the head studs, and then 3 bolts that are holding the head in, and this thing is off. So that's pretty much, we're almost there. We'll definitely knock this out in this video and get to that block and see what's going on. Just another thing that you can kind of peep. Let's go back in, put some flash on. Oops, wrong thing. The oil in the head still has all that milky stuff. You know, for those that don't know why we're doing this, we got chocolate milk for oil because the head gasket isn't properly sealing. So we got to replace this head gasket, and I'm also taking the head to get properly decked, completely mirror smooth, since it's an MLS head gasket. That is something I didn't do before, and that's why I think it's not fully sealing. But outside of that, we're good. In the meantime, like while the head is at the shop, I already explained this in another video, but while the head is at the shop, I'll probably clean up some of this stuff, clean up some of the wiring and the routing, install my brake line kit, install the clutch line, you know, all the stuff that I have easy access to right now while I'm waiting on that part of the build to be done. So yep, like I said, come back to this on Monday or Tuesday, pop off that harmonic balancer and get the rest of this stuff done so that we can continue onwards with hopefully a decent car build. All right, I'm back again. I have my impact ready to go, but the impact does not fit in there, and I do not have enough battery to crank the car. That battery has been failing. It is a bad battery, and so I don't have enough to crank the car and try to pop this off. And I'd honestly rather not, now that it's in top dead center and stuff like that. So I'd rather just pop it off with the impact, which means that I need more room down there, which means that I need to pop out my radiator. Now, unlike everybody else, my radiator I have notched and did basically custom mounting, as you can see, which isn't really that impressive, but it holds, it doesn't move anywhere, and it's solid. I've already disconnected the top because the top was part of the intake. So in order to get this out for me, very simple, disconnect the bottom hose, and then it is literally a matter of just popping these up with a hammer because they come down here. Pop those up and this whole thing just pops out. That's pretty much it. So that's why I'm not really fretting on having to take the radiator out. It's already not full of any coolant because of the whole oil and coolant situation. So I'm gonna get this out, then I'll be able to pop that off, and we can go ahead and start getting the rest of this thing out. It is currently a blizzard outside. It took me a little minute to get up in here, and it is currently still snowing. So it'll be cold, just bear with me on that. Depending on how that goes, I may or may not be able to get everything wrapped up today to get the head off, but we will see. So let's go. One thing to note about the RB engines, I don't know if the aftermarket harmonic balancers have this or not, but when you want to pull this harmonic balancer off, if you go to AutoZone, they have two different types of pullers. This one is not the one that you want. This is the generic harmonic balancer puller. This one basically will go in there, but it basically relies on the puller to have bolts that you would thread in on these grooves, and it'll pull from that. The RBs do not have those. You may see holes down there. Those holes are not threaded. There are no bolts that can go in there. This puller will not work. What you actually need is this one. This is the one that you need for the RB engines. This is the Chrysler harmonic balancer, so don't let them fool you. It is $75 to rent from AutoZone. However, it's $75 you get back as soon as you return it, so it's not really that much of an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this up, pull that thing off, and then get going on it. Problem that I'm facing now, as you can see, or as you have seen, the head is ready to come off. One thing, make sure you keep the order of everything from this point forward exactly the same way. I got a couple shims that are still in there, and this stud was actually loose, or not loose, but the nut on top of that stud, the nut on top of that stud didn't break loose, so I ended up unscrewing the whole stud. So that stud's coming with, and then there's like two shims for those nuts. There's one in there that didn't pull out with the magnet, and so keep track of that. But more specifically is back here. So first problem is this area, my rear head drain, the Ross Performance rear head drain, is hitting this, and that's keeping me from pulling it off. Secondly, this bolt is a ground for the wiring harness, but that's not preventing me from keeping it, taking it off. I can unscrew that, and that's just connected to this harness right here. So I'm gonna unscrew that anyway, but this head drain is probably gonna be the thing that keeps me from taking this whole thing out, because I need to get my real hammer, which is at home of course, and bash this in so I get more clearance to pull this out. So fun fact, or not fun fact, but Another benefit about doing this while it's in the car is I now know what clears and what does not clear when it's time to make things happen. So if I have to do this a second time around, it'll be twice as easy. But yeah, I'm gonna figure that out. I have the half moon. Oh, okay, that's right there. The half moon just popped out. All right, now it's deep in there, so I'll have to get that out somehow. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. Right, so I can't get the head up. I went ahead and hammered the back here where the rear head drain was hitting, but even after that it hits this like lip, and I was about to try to hammer this up, but I just don't have the room. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the studs out and see if I can slide it forward. And so the studs, the ARP studs, they are, this one, as I said, was already loose, or already, like, instead of the nut that clamps down on it coming out, the stud came out. So that one's good, but the rest of these are not. So these, as you can see down there, hold on, let's get some light. They have the grease on them, but it's like a hex fitting, basically, of these hex heads. So I'm just gonna try to pop these out with this, and then I should be able to slide this whole thing forward and off the car, and it should be easy. And then once it's gone, I'm gonna hammer the absolute loving piss out of the back of that firewall. Alright, managed to get it off in that last little time lapse. So this is the head, that's the block. I took off the head gasket over there and take a little look at this thing. Let's get some flash going. But this is what I was talking about. You see how it's got those little spots and stuff? That is from the OEM head gasket that was on here. I did take a razor blade and, like, you know, go over it to make it smooth, but this is not a mirror surface, which is what you're supposed to have for a metal head gasket. So of course this wouldn't seal. And then the other thing is for the actual head itself, I didn't really get this decked. So under there you got the same kind of thing. I didn't get that decked either. I don't know if you can see it, but you know, heads aren't light and it's still got a lot of oil in there, so I'll take care of that in a second. But yeah, so that's the thing that I suggest is probably the cause for my thing. I'm not really seeing too much like of a damage thing going on. Everything's wet from the coolant and oil that was on the head and stuff. You know, getting it off was a little bit of a struggle, but you can see that there is coolant in the coolant ports. So those are not the areas where the coolant is mixing. I really think it's just a matter of some spots where it hasn't fully sealed. I don't know if the oil that's on this surface is because of the oil falling off of the top of the head, or if this is just all around from it not really sealing. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this regardless. So yeah, that's what we got going on for here. For the most part, that's going to be the majority of the end of this video. This is what I was talking about. So where that screw is that I mentioned earlier, I pulled the head the first time around to do the head gasket the first time, and this screw was so well hidden that I didn't see it. But when I was pulling the head, I used the hoist, so it came off with ease and it did this damage. But this is a coolant port, I believe, since it's right next to the thermostat, and you see that there is a little bit of space right there. So with a gasket, a decent gasket with ARP studs and stuff like that, I wasn't really worried about this since it goes outwards. And with the whole when the car was running and stuff, I never got any leaks from this area. which is another thing that made me not worried about it. That's the only damage to the block that I know of, and that's caused by me. But I'm gonna take the sharpening tool and go over it to get that mirror surface. I'm gonna disassemble this, so the next part to this series will be disassembly of the head. That'll be the cams, lifters, all that stuff. I started taking the coil packs out so I could hammer, but that wasn't really helping. So we'll be doing that on the next one, disassembling this, taking it to the guys that's gonna, you know, deck the head and look it over. I still have to think about getting it ported and polished, just like I might as well, but I forgot to ask them. And I got to get that half moon out of there. But for now, we are going to end it here. Another thing that I will do while this is all out and stuff is I'm definitely going to rearrange all this to make it easy to pull the head if I have to do it again for whatever reason. And I am going to make sure that I have way more clearance back there than I do currently. So, like I said, part 3 coming soon. Like, comment, subscribe, follow the build. Ready to keep it going on this. And until next time.